My name is Charles Xu. I'm here with the Chow Collective. Um, and unlike, I think, probably most of my fellow speakers, I did not actually participate in a formal organized peace delegation to China. Um, so rather, I will be sort of presenting some reflections from my personal family trip to China last October,
Hello.
which, as you might expect, the itinerary was not entirely political in nature, right? But where I could, I did manage to string together some visits to sites of historical and political importance, and so I'll be presenting my reflections on those in a sequence that's not chronological, but that hopefully makes sense. Um, so to that end, let's see. Yeah, so I'll start with where I was staying. My family was there to visit my grandparents for the occasion of my grandfather's 90th birthday. And so we actually stayed with them. This is the daytime and nighttime view from uh, their apartment, basically. It's located in a xiaoxu or a micro district. They've been living there for several decades, and it's been a sort of stable community over that time, which has centered on their danwei or their old work unit. This has been sort of a durable form of small community building during this entire period of great transition in China, and it's a testament to sort of the broader commitment to livability, to making this community in Shanghai a true as they call it, a 15-minute district, or 15-minute community life circle. This is a concept that's been recently rolled out. You can see here that it's highlighted in the Urban Planning Exhibition Center, also in Shanghai. And yeah, it's the idea essentially that all individual and communal needs are met within sort of a 15-minute travel time. And this Urban Planning Exhibition Center, it covers you know plenty of future-oriented developments, green planning, and the so-called sequence of new cities that are being built up around Shanghai. But it also looks to the past of how Shanghai was built out in a very interesting way, in a way that really illustrates party leadership. In particular, the preservation of historic sites is very well integrated into this. And the foremost among them in historical terms in Shanghai itself is, of course, the founding Congress of the Communist Party of China. So there's a little, mock-up of that here. And then, of course, that was part of my actual itinerary from the beginning. So here's some photos from the museum that was built there recently in 2021 to mark the 100th anniversary of the founding of the CPC. Yeah, you see on the left, pretty much all of the attendees at the founding Congress. And I think something that's worth noting about how this is presented is that it's very honest about the divergent trajectories of a lot of the figures involved, right? It's a very detailed history, and it's honest about the fact that not all of these figures went on necessarily to become paragons of revolutionary virtue per se. On the left-hand side here, you see the two co-founders, or the two initial leaders of the Communist Party, Li Dazhao and Chen Dushu. And the latter of those is recognized today as a flawed figure, right, for having later gone down a Trotskyist route. But he's still honored for his revolutionary contributions. On the right-hand side, the plaques on the wall do note that, in fact, two of the founding members of, or the founding attendees of the Congress went on to join the Japanese collaborationist regime of Wang Jingwei, right? So that history is presented in its full complexity and contradictions in a way that I thought was quite admirable. Also in Shanghai, or Shanghai was home for most of his career to the esteemed left-wing writer Lu Xun. And so there's a whole sort of park and museum dedicated to him there. Um, in symbolic terms, you see how this presents a portrait of him that was sort of made up out of individual illustrations of various facets of his life, his work, of the broad movements of the Chinese masses that he gave voice to, right? Um, and his tomb is also located in Shanghai, in a very picturesque park. You have this inscription by Mao himself over the tomb. This park was also notably the site of an active anti-Japanese resistance by a Korean migrant, which is also commemorated there with a memorial garden. And really, the memorialization of the anti-Japanese resistance suffuses many locations in Shanghai. Like, for example, uh, there was this classical garden dating all the way back to the Ming Dynasty, Guyi Garden, which he visited, um, which itself was by no means left physically untouched by this episode, but in a very symbolic way, I think. This is a pavilion in this garden that symbolically had its northeast corner chopped off after the 1931 occupation of the northeast provinces of Manchuria by Japan, in symbolism of that. And then at the ends of the other three corners, you have these fists, right, that were installed to represent the anti-Japanese resistance. Um, Another episode very particular to Shanghai, which is of great relevance today during this period, was the fact that it was host as well to around 20,000 Jewish refugees from the Holocaust from all over Europe, or all over Nazi-occupied Europe. This museum is very interesting. Here, just two parts of its exterior. There's a wall of names of at least 13,000 of those refugees, and a particular memorial to Jakob Rosenfeld, who was an Austrian Jewish doctor who, after going into exile in Shanghai, went on to actually join the Communist Party of China and to rise to the rank of general in the Northeast People's Liberation Army. Very interesting life trajectory there. For me, as a member of the Chinese diaspora, one particular story as well memorialized in Shanghai that's of particular relevance is that of Qian Xuesen, who came to the United States originally on a Boxer Rebellion Indemnity scholarship, went on to become one of the pioneers of rocketry, and during the 30s, right? And then after 1949 was essentially hounded by McCarthyist persecution. He was put under house arrest for 5 years and then deported to China, where he vowed never to set foot again in the United States, and in fact went on to become the father of the Chinese space and ballistic missile program. So there's a large museum there honoring him, and it shows not just his technical achievements, but also the seriousness of his commitment to the study of Marxist philosophy. So on the right-hand side here, you see his personal copies of Dialectics of Nature by Engels, as well as On Practice and On Contradiction by Mao. Also of personal significance is that he took an academic trajectory fairly similar to mine, in that he attended MIT and then Caltech. So those are his diplomas from there. It's part of the reason why he is a figure of so much interest to me in particular. Yes, so that was a smattering of the sort of places that I visited in Shanghai, mostly solo. And then there was a leg of our trip, which went through Anhui province, and this was sort of more rural in nature. This is a village called Tangmo, which today has transitioned to a model of sort of sustainable tourism that's very much rooted in the sort of traditional artistic and craft making activities of its population in a way that helps to sort of reintegrate younger generations into the village so it doesn't sort of die out, right, with the older generation. So I thought was very interesting. Um, and yes, all this said, the bulk of my travels to these sites of particular political interest for me were solo because much as I appreciated uh, the rotating cast of relatives who were paying host to us, a lot of them came from the generation that, as the Qian mentioned in his presentation, uh, came of age in the reform period, right, and have a lot of I would say positive illusions about the United States. Are not necessarily ideologically committed to the vision of communism, and so I decided to take a solo leg of my trip to Beijing in order to put myself back in the company of communists. And so this is me with Marco Fernandez and Ting Chak of Dongsheng News and Tricontinental. We had a very extensive chat, in particular about the uphill struggle that is there to re-embed a sort of socialist values into the art world in particular, right, which has undergone extensive cultural liberalization. And there are signs of this sort of slowly creeping out, not necessarily in organized fashion, but on the left-hand side here, we can see this is a photo that I took at the M50 Arts District in Shanghai at a studio by a bamboo craftsperson. So everything here is made completely of bamboo. You can see in the center, there's a hammer and sickle there, right? Just embedded among the other designs. Um, and that said, it's in the popular sectors, right, that the attachment to the ideal of communism is, I think, a much more visible in nature. And so, here on the right-hand side is one of the hutongs, one of these traditional neighborhood alleys of Beijing. And you can see that very much in evidence there. Just some remaining, some points of interest from the Beijing leg of my trip. I only had 2 days there, so there was a lot that I couldn't see. But here's a memorial to the May 4th movement of 1919, which is a great sort of anti-imperialist uprising, objecting to the transfer of Chinese territory from Germany to Japan after after World War One, sorry. One of the founding impetuses for the Communist Party of China. And I want to conclude, I'm actually going to skip through this just because everyone has seen Tiananmen. I want to conclude with sort of two locations in Beijing as well that speak to its attachment to national unity and to the integration of China in all of its multi-ethnic diversity, right? One is the Yonghe Lama Temple, which is the largest Tibetan Buddhist temple outside of Tibet itself. You can see, the commitment to an ecumenical and multi-ethnic and multilingual China, just embedded here on the left-hand side on that sign. It's written in Chinese, Manchu, Mongolian, and Tibetan. And on the right-hand side, you can see an illustration of Mao Zedong visiting that exact same location, right? That same door. This is part of a museum exhibit there, which really illustrates how this temple has promoted sort of the expansion of Tibetan Buddhism outside of Tibet, and really the extensive two-way interaction, right, between Tibet and the rest of China over the course of centuries. And I want to conclude with, let's see, when are these pictures going to come? Yes, there's also a small square called Alishan in Beijing, which essentially is dedicated to Taiwan, right? As you can see from the outline on the right, it's very close to a Taiwan Guild Hall, which has the statue outside of essentially 5 Taiwanese students and officials petitioning the emperor in 1895 not to transfer sovereignty of Taiwan from China to Japan, right, after the first Sino-Japanese War. And this is essentially a symbol of how long there has been this patriotic pro-unification element in Taiwan, right? And I want to wrap up with that essentially because we at Chao Collective are proud to have recently released an extensive timeline and resource list on Taiwan on the pro-unification left, on various elements of history like the ones depicted here that get erased from the discourse today. And so I highly encourage everyone on this call to check that out if you haven't seen it yet, and I will drop a link to it right after this presentation. Thank you.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.